Time keeps on ticking as we move forward with the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. We are already in Week 5 of the NFL season. Postseason baseball is here. No New York teams, unfortunately. Hockey starts next week, along with preseason basketball. But you know how we do each week. We talk about the 3 hottest topics in Big Apple sports. And this week, joining me is a fellow Brooklynite. Representing Bay Ridge, he's also a fellow sports reporter and anchor. You can see him doing his thing with the PIX 11 sports team, including on New York Sports Nation on Sunday nights. One of the best in the business, my guy, Joe Mauceri. Joe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Dex. Thanks for the compliment. That might be the most praise I've ever gotten in an interview.
No, see, I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that was the most praise you got. I'm glad to have you here.
Be my hype man. I'm going to take you around everywhere.
Okay, look, if you pay me a little bit, that'll be fine too. Glad to have Joe here, one of my favorite fellow sports journalists in the industry. So really glad to have you here, Joe. There's a lot to get into this week. We're going to talk about the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. We've got, including a Giants player, going against the fans as his team is trying to right the ship. And speaking of righting the ship, Zach Wilson, he might have done that. People are saying that he might have righted the ship. We'll see about that. But first, Joe, we got to talk about the Mets. On Sunday, the Mets announced that Buck Showalter, he announced that he would not return to manage the team in 2024. So I got to ask you this, because it was pretty shocking on Sunday when this all went down. Was Buck to blame for the Mets' struggles in 2023?
You know, I think he said it last year, and he has probably said it many times throughout his career. When a manager gets credit, they get too much credit, right? When they get the blame, they get too much blame. Buck was not the reason, but he was one of the reasons. We all praised Buck when he won NL Manager of the Year, and he had his guys doing the little things. They were taking the extra bases. They were finding a way to get the double play or scratch out a run. They didn't do that this year. They had mistakes on the base paths. So some of that has to be attributable to him if we're going to give him the credit when things go right. But this team had problems up and down. They didn't get what they should have out of Verlander and Scherzer. The bullpen was an absolute mess. They couldn't hold games when they got the lead. And then you look at guys like Daniel Vogelbach, who never lived up to expectations. Starling Marte, after an all-star season, ends up just not being able to produce. Was Buck the problem? No. Was he one of the problems? Yes, this season.
Yeah, when you combine that with the fact, if you want to say that he was one of the problems, right, you understand that that was the case. But David Stearns, he was going to make changes and want to have his guy in. So you kind of understand that, too. Speaking of changes, it didn't stop there, right?
Yeah.
On Thursday, general manager Billy Eppler, he resigned from the position. Another shocking move. In New York Post Mets beat reporter Mike Puma, he reported that Eppler and Showalter, they had butted heads over Daniel Vogelbach, who you just mentioned, his playing time. So as the Mets enter a new era with David Stearns at the helm, is a fresh start at GM also the right move for this team?
So here's the thing. Is it the right move? Yes, in my opinion. But you mentioned the surprise that comes out of this. I think the plan all along was that Eppler would still be there, even if it was in name only, because Stearns is going to be making those personnel decisions. I think when you talk about a manager and a GM, it's important to bring both of them together at the same time, because Bill Parcells once famously said, if you're going to ask me to cook the meal, let me shop for the groceries, when he wanted to be coach and GM. At the very least, you want to make sure that the guy who's shopping for the groceries, in this case going out and signing free agents, is getting the right ingredients for the way you want to play.
Right.
And so those need to be on the same page. So I think it makes sense that you look for a new GM at the same time you're looking for a manager. Obviously, Billy Eppler just made that a little bit easier by resigning. Now, I think there's more to this story that we'll end up learning in the future, because there's a lot of smoke around this story. I don't think it's just players on the injured list right now.
Yeah, I feel like there's might be more going on. I was talking with my producer, Greg, about that earlier. Might be some more going on with that, and we'll see. Last thing I'm going to ask here before we move on. Are you optimistic about the Mets going forward? Is there optimism for you in your eyes with this team moving forward?
Yes, because Steve Cohen is my owner, right? When you have a blank check that you can write for any player, you can go out and sign a free agent if you want to. Now, look, he said that he wasn't going to go and just throw bad money after bad investments. However, I think there's a different aspect when it comes to it, because he's running the team like a fan would, right? We saw the contract that he went and gave to Francisco Lindor when Lindor basically waited to the 25th hour before the season started. I think the same thing's going to happen with Pete Alonso. He's going to go out and pay him, because the money just doesn't mean that much to Steve Cohen. What means something is winning a championship. And when you have an owner like that, which doesn't exist pretty much anywhere else in sports, you have an advantage that no other team has.
Yeah, see, Mets fans have to be excited about that, or optimistic, I should say, about that. Okay, let's talk about the Giants, and we can't talk about the Giants this week without talking about, I see you're ready with the reaction, struggling Giants right tackle Evan Neal. He found himself in some hot water this week when he criticized Giants fans for booing. Now, Joe, you know this never works, okay? This never works at all. And his comments, they came after the Giants. They were embarrassed by the Seahawks on Monday night. Joe, we've seen this before, as I said, in terms of never working. This is another episode of a struggling New York athlete who decided to take on the paying customers and also insult them as well, too. How should Big Blue fans feel about his comments with the team not looking good right now? I want to also acknowledge he did apologize, but how should they feel about his comments with the team in the state that they are in?
Whether you were looking good or bad, you never pick a fight with City Hall and you never pick a fight with the fans, right? His own teammate, Saquon Barkley, said they're going to be here after us. They were here before us. Players wear laundry, right? Jerry Seinfeld said fans root for that laundry, not the player inside of it. So, look, obviously, you never pick a fight with the fans. I do have a little bit of sympathy for the guy because he is clearly frustrated by his own play on the field. He's not living up to the expectations of a first-round, 7th overall pick. And frankly, which is what the Giants need him to live up to if this team and Daniel Jones are going to perform the way they're expected to this season. So I get that the frustration's boiled over. But he took it a step further when he called fans sheep, right? When he insulted them with flipping hot dogs and burgers and disrespected somebody who's working hard for the money. In fairness to him, I've spoken to Evan Neal in the Giants locker room a couple times. That's not who he is. I truly don't believe that's who he is. I think he was rolling in an emotional moment and it got the best of him. And the second he saw those comments in print, I'm sure he wanted to take them back. And he did his mea culpa. Not only did he send that tweet out on his notes app, which may have been questionable, he stood by his locker the next day and he apologized over and over again. After that, you can decide as the fan whether you want to forgive him or you want to continue to boo him. And I think New York sports fans are going to continue to boo him. If he plays well, he can change that.
Oh, yeah.
But he's got to start by playing well. The good news for him is they're on the road against Miami this week. Then they go to Buffalo. In 3 weeks, a lot can change in an NFL season, and the storylines can have a tendency to move on. I think the attention might be on the defense by the time they get back to MetLife, which might help soften the blow for Evan Neal as he returns home.
Yeah, I'm sure he's happy to not have to see the fans. Nothing against the fans. He might be happy to not see them for a couple of weeks, as you mentioned there. I also think we should note that he's a young man. When we're young,
23 years old. Listen, I did a lot of stupid things before the age of 25. My wife will tell you I still do a lot of stupid things. I ask forgiveness, right? We are all human, as he said.
Yeah, we're human. He made a mistake. He's apologized. Not the best choice of words, but hopefully he learns and grows from this. We can hope that. But you talked about the G-men, 1-3. They have to face the Dolphins this week in Week 5. We know that Miami offense, very high powered. They can put up points. Here's the thing. Do you think the Giants can right the ship in Week 5? And how do they get it done, Joe? How do they get this done when they haven't looked so good thus far?
Yeah, I think this is just a terrible matchup at a terrible time for Big Blue. You mentioned the Dolphins offense. They put up 72 weeks ago against the Denver Broncos. Then they're coming off a loss against the division rival Buffalo Bills on the road. Now they return home where it's supposed to be hot and humid. It's already tough enough to play in Miami this time of year. I heard Rex Ryan say it this week. When you go down there, the shade on the field is only on the Dolphins side. So the opposing team on the visitor's sideline is sitting in that heat all game. That's going to be a huge disadvantage for the Giants, who were disadvantaged coming into this. They have a young secondary, and going up against that McDaniels offense, it's going to be so difficult to stay with the speed that the Dolphins have. Obviously, you know Tyreek Hill, you know Waddle, you know Mostert. All of those guys are like the fastest guys in the NFL. And the problem with that is the Giants can't get any pressure on the opposing quarterback right now. They've got just 2 sacks on the season. So if you tell me that Tua has time to sit back there and allows the fastest players in the league more time to get open, it just feels like a recipe for disaster with the Giants going into this one.
Well, if you're saying that it feels like a recipe for disaster, what concerns me if it's 1-4, you talked about Buffalo the week after, things could get worse.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people said that the game against Seattle was the must-win game to save their season. Well, they didn't win that one, so now they're in the bed that they made.
They are. Giants 1-3 heading into this matchup with the Dolphins on Sunday. We'll see how they do. Hopefully things get better. Also, hopefully things get better for Evan Neal as well. Okay. On to the Jets and Gangrene. They sort of had a win, Joe, even though they lost to the Chiefs.
A moral victory.
A moral victory. I don't really like talking about moral victories in sports, but here we are talking about moral victories. Zach Wilson, he actually looked solid, looked like a competent quarterback in the 23-20 loss. He threw for 245 yards, also had 2 scores. Here's the question, because I've been hearing this from Jets fans. Zach Wilson has turned a corner. People are saying that. It's one game. What do you say, Joe?
All right.
Has Zach Wilson turned a corner? Has this actually happened?
I have been one of the few that have defended Zach Wilson, okay? To start the season, he has looked better than he did last season. He was completely lost. He was a deer in headlights at the end of last season. And the best thing that happened for him was the season ending, so that he can just go decompress and start over. And obviously, the second best thing was having Aaron Rodgers come to town, who you can learn under. So he has found a little bit more of that confidence. I thought in the loss to the Patriots, that was the issue, is he was still too hesitant. I think he got criticized for not seeing some of the throws. I think he saw it, but then he second-guessed it, and because of his history with Bill Belichick, decided to pull it down to avoid a turnover because he knew it was going to be a defensive game rather than cost them the game. I think what you saw in this game against the Chiefs, they expected to be more offensive, higher scoring. They say, go out there and let it rip because we're not going to win if we don't score a certain amount of points. And that confidence showed through in Wilson. I look at the touchdown he threw to Lazard. It was so decisive, might be the best throw I've seen him make in his career. And it just got by the defender. That's what the NFL is. It's a game of millimeters, right? Al Pacino talked about inches, and we fight for that inch, we die for that inch. But really, it's even finer than that. And if you have to think before you throw the ball, you're going to be lost. You're going to be throwing picks. He didn't do that. He trusted what he was seeing out there in a way that I haven't seen him trust his throws and his reads since he came into the NFL. That is good news for Gangrene.
All right, so good news. But I feel like you said all that, and I hear that's good news. You're not saying that he turned the corner, though. You're not saying that yet.
Listen,
it's a start.
It's a week-to-week league. It's a start, right? You got to find a building block. I think, like I said, I think he was better this year than last year. I think that was his best game. He's moving in the right direction. Did he find the key that's going to unlock Zach Wilson, expert level? We'll find out.
It's a start. You're right. Week to week, you got to take things week by week. You can't overreact. You have to see. And this week, he has a challenge to face the Broncos. Now, there's a lot that's going on with the Broncos, guys, in terms of this, because you have the comments that you had from Sean Payton about Nathaniel Hackett, former Broncos head coach, before the start of the season. Maybe the players want to go and get a win for Nathaniel Hackett. I'm not sure about that exactly. But with the fact that they've lost 3 straight games, Joe, do you view Sunday's contest against the Broncos as a must-win? We just talked about that with the Giants. Yeah. Is this a must-win for the Jets?
If they have any hopes of still salvaging a playoff spot, it absolutely is. I think a lot of people flushed that idea with Aaron Rodgers going down, on the 4th snap of the game opening night. But look, this team was solid to start last season. They got off to a great start before they collapsed down the stretch. And a lot of that has to do with the level of competition that you're facing. The Jets have faced a high level of competition to start the season. This is their lowest level of competition. The Broncos' defense has been absolutely abysmal. They are the team that the Miami Dolphins put up 70 against. But it hasn't just been the Miami Dolphins. They gave up, I believe it was 28 points to the Chicago Bears, made Justin Fields look like Joe Montana out there. I would pick a Bears quarterback, Sid Luckman. You got to go way back to find a Bears quarterback that had put up decent stats on a consistent basis. But then they gave up 35 points to the Washington Commanders. This defense has struggled, and they struggled at home. Traditionally, Mile High is a huge home field advantage, but they started the season 0-2 against the Raiders and the Commanders at home, and I think that's seriously concerning. And don't forget, they released Randy Gregory this week, who they just signed as a free agent a year ago for $70 million, and now he's no part of the defense. You're actually better off without him, you feel, because you're going to go with younger guys. Things are a mess right now in Denver. Maybe Sean Payton wanted to walk back those comments a little bit. He spoke too soon when he was criticizing Nathaniel Hackett.
He might have spoke too soon, and with all that you just said there, with the mess that the Broncos in, feels like the Jets need to win this game. They really got to do that. We'll see if they can do that. They've got a test that would get their record to 2-3 if they get a win on Sunday. That is Joe Mauceri. You survived the New York Sports Rapid Rundown.
Man, you grill him.
No, man, I knew you were going to handle this. That's not a hot seat for you. I knew you were going to handle this just well.
I appreciate it. Anytime you need me, man, happy to come by.
Glad to have you here. Could you let the people know about New York Sports Nation and everything you do there?
Yeah, definitely. Check it out. New York Sports Nation airs every Sunday night at 11 o'clock on PIX 11. And then, of course, Monday through Friday, we've got Sports Nation Nightly. Usually I'm out covering the Jets or Giants, so hopefully getting the takes and speaking to the athletes directly. So when you hear it from me, it's usually because I've spoken to them. So
there you go. You do a fantastic job with it. We're going to have to have you. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. We're also good to always have a fellow Brooklynite here.
Yes.
That is always good to have. We're going to have you back here. That's Joe Mauceri. Check out his work. For Dexter Henry and the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. Until next time, guys. Peace.